Welcome to High Performance, the podcast featuring Josh Phegan and Alexander Phillips. Alexander, today we're going to talk about really improving your knowledge as an agent and how that can really impact on the consumer that you're working with. And I think that the big driver here is to understand the types of people that you're going to work with. In real estate, we meet many different types of buyers. You've got buyers that want to move into a house because they want to be a homeowner. You've got buyers that are looking to buy a property because they actually want to invest in that particular home and get a rental return. And then you've also got buyers that are buying a property because they want to speculate that maybe, for example, that property price might go up in a certain period of time. There might be a rezoning or something like that they're hoping will actually substantially change the value, so then they can turn around and sell that property at a profit in a reasonably short period of time. Why is it important to know the reasons why a buyer is actually buying a property, and how does that impact in the negotiation and process when we're going to work with them?
Josh, that's a really good question because it comes back to the qualification questions when you're meeting that buyer face-to-face or on the phone and understanding why they're looking at buying this. And then obviously you're a sales agent, you're there to sell and upsell the best you can to make sure that they obviously get emotional, even if they're an investor, and make sure that they pay a premium for it. So obviously understanding on what are they looking for, if they're an investor, rental yields, certain capital growth, depreciation, what areas they're looking at, what type of tenants may be there, and understanding that marketplace because you've got a property management arm in your business. And I think it's, obviously then you're building that rapport and then obviously then helping them, secure the property.
And so the big driver here is that to understand that if you're working with an investor, then one of the important points is maybe come down to aspect if they're buying an apartment in a building and even an aspect in a property, because you might actually buy that property for a little less than you would the one that's got a better aspect in terms of maybe northeast versus say south. But you know what, when a tenant actually comes to lease a property, they don't really get to make the decision which apartment they want or not. It's usually based on which one's available. And so often they can get a higher yield on a property that they buy at a cheaper price because it doesn't have maybe the perfect aspect, but it can make a huge difference. And also one of the things, and this relates inside of property and what we call depreciation. If you're an investor and you're going to go and buy a property, there's going to be the depreciation on that property, particularly if it's a new home, about the fixtures and fittings. So, carpets and all of those, and kitchens and bathrooms and all of those things that at some point will actually need to get replaced over the life of a home. Now, if you're selling to an investor and they're buying a new property maybe off the plan, one of the things they might be asking for is a depreciation plan or an accelerated depreciation plan. And what actually is that? Well, that's an idea on how much the tax office is going to allow you to depreciate on that property so that you can claim that for a tax benefit, in the following year. Now, that's a really important point to know, that particularly if you're selling new homes or you're selling a property that would suit an investor that particularly has had a new renovation on that home, is there a depreciation schedule that's been done? And usually what happens is that a quantity surveyor comes out and gives you an idea about that tax depreciation. Now, that's also really important too for anyone who's in the property management team, because if they're actually managing investment properties, when was the last time that their landlord actually had a depreciation schedule completed? Because that depreciation schedule might be of benefit to that owner in order for them to claim some tax benefit, when they actually go to doing their tax. One of the things that's also important, Alex, is what we call the yield or the rental return on a property, but also to the capital growth in a property. What do most of the clients that you're working with tend to look for, particularly if they're investing? Is it rental return, or is it actually being able to get some capital growth in the saleable value of the home?
I think it's mainly rental return because it affects their affordability and how much they can actually invest in the property. So we're finding yields are being crunched lower and lower, but investors can afford to take that on, given rates are so low and it's costing them, it's a lot cheaper to borrow money and they can borrow more money. So it's a really good thing to know that where the cash rates are sitting at the moment, interest rates, what the banks are doing, and getting a rough idea from speaking to various investors, what yields they're looking at. Like there's many apartment blocks, like blocks of 4s and blocks of 8s of Art Deco type of property in the eastern suburbs of Sydney that were selling for 4 to 5% rental yields. Now investors are buying them on 2.5 to 3.5%. It's because they can afford it with a low interest rate. So you got to really get an understanding of why that they can afford to pay more given the yields are so much lower.
And I think the other thing too is if you're selling a property that is maybe a little bit more run down or is a little bit tired and is the sort of thing that someone could renovate or upgrade, then they're really speculating there. So they're going to look at what the purchase price is and then add all of their costs to get the painters through and do all of those things. And then they're hoping, so what's the sale price going to be, or what's the rental price going to be? When you're working on properties that are run down like that, what are some of the tips or the tools that you use in order to be able to get the most out of those buyers that are really trying to buy it the cheapest they can, to maximize their profit line?
Well, like if, for example, I've bought and sold quite a few properties myself that have been unrenovated. I've done, quick renovations, kitchen, bathrooms, paint, carpet, whatever it might be. And I've actually know how much that will cost, because a lot of buyers come in and go, it's going to cost 100 grand, 200 grand, and come up with these figures in their heads. Well, one, I've actually referred people that have done kitchens, carpet, paint, and got quotes for people and made them feel more comfortable that, for a quarter of what they're thinking, they can get an extra $200 or $300 a week out of the rental return, and actually helping them get that and changing their mindset on the costs and what they're going to get out the back end of it.
And so I think that's a really important point, is that really know and understand the buyer, but understand that as a real estate agent, it's actually your role to actually have those conversations. And so, this is important, that what you say the rental return is going to be actually what your property management team is backing up based on comparable properties that have actually leased as well. And we see that a lot with, people that go forward to buy and they say, Alex, what will this lease for? Whatever it is. But then when it comes to talking to the property management team, they're like, no, it's actually $100 less or even $100 more. So it's important that if you're going to be selling a property that suits an investor, go to your property management team, get a proof of rent letter that this is what, from the property management team that you can actually have on display if it suits that type of buyer. So I think that, that knowledge and understanding of who people are is going to make a massive difference. Alex, what are the types of buyers that you're seeing out in the marketplace at the moment? Are there a flood of more investors, or are we in a position that's more home occupiers, or more people that are looking to speculate on property?
Probably the speculators, but mainly owner occupiers, given they can borrow a whole lot more than what they previously have been able to, and they're outbidding investors. So it's probably more the fact that investors have shied away because they keep getting keep coming second best at auctions and whatnot. So it's definitely the emotional buyer out there at the moment.
Alex, what are the elements in a property that make it really desirable in a marketplace? Is it purely just things like location and aspect, or are there other things too that that really make a property hot from a buyer's perspective?
The number one thing that we sell when we're selling real estate is lifestyle, and that's the main reason why people move. They want to be closer to beach, schools, parks, transport, villages, and understanding of what that is. Then you come back to the property and get an understanding on the aspect, the layout, and the attributes of the property with accommodation and whatnot.
So I think that the important thing is here is that remember that people buy perceived lifestyle rather than the property itself. And that from our understanding how buyers work is that they will often pay more for a property where everything is already done rather than having to do it themselves. So understand how you actually pitch and present a property, know the type of person that you're dealing with, whether or not it's an investor, a speculator, or someone who's moving in from a home ownership point of view, because there's going to be different ways that they're going to be arriving at the value, which is going to be critical when you come to negotiate.